people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. Some words from the former unified super featherweight champion Michaela Mayer, who's confident she would have closed the gap if the Baumgardner bout was 12 rounds. And if my aunt had a dick, she'd be my uncle.
Woulda, coulda, shoulda.
It seems like neither Michaela Mayer or her supporters want to acknowledge that Alicia Baumgardner went into that fight with no advantages. She was quoted as saying, at this level, that extra time would separate the good from the great. It would be way more decisive of a win, and you'd get to see true championship rounds. Mayer is planning to move up in weight for her next fight. As BoxingScene.com previously reported, Mayer is in line to face former two-time WBO junior welterweight titleist Christina Lenarditu. Mayer is looking to recover after suffering her first career defeat last October when she dropped a 10-round split decision to Alicia Baumgardner in their four-belt super featherweight unification clash.
Whenever you highlight this, that Alicia Baumgardner had no advantages in that fight, that in many ways she was the away fighter. She was the matchroom fighter boxing on a boxer show.
Michaela's supporters often respond to that inconvenient truth by either being obtuse
and irrational.
Alicia was always going to come out strong for the first three, and then she's going to slowly fade, Mayer said. We had a really good strategy, and I guarantee if we had 3-minute rounds, you would have seen me really close that gap and the scores. When you're just getting into the rhythm of the round, ding, the round is over. It's breaking the fight up too much. You're just feeling it out, starting to see your opponent's gaps. You have them hurt on the ropes, and all of a sudden they call time. I just feel like it's holding us back and taking us to that next level.
When did Michaela Mayer ever have Alicia Baumgardner hurt on the ropes?
She didn't. That was a hypothetical scenario. Moreover, the problem with Michaela Mayer's hierarchy of thought is that Alicia Baumgardner didn't need 12 3-minute rounds to beat you.
And she did beat you.
And if neither you or your supporters want to accept that, well, that's just a tough titty is what that is, but it's not going to change anything.
She didn't need 12 3-minute rounds to beat you. She beat you in 10 2-minute rounds, and while it was close, while it was competitive, she did beat you.
And until you acknowledge that and figure out why and what you need to do differently in a rematch,
we'll keep carrying on about the woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Listen, that's a rematch that everyone wants to see. I think it's going to be huge. And I think it's a rivalry that we really, really have to continue to capitalize on. Maybe a trilogy. I think it's great for the sport, not just for my career, or for her career, which it is, but for the sport in general. So that is the only fight that I would go back down to 134.
I don't think Michaela's wrong. The second fight may turn out to be even bigger than the first. The first was a co-main event to the main event, Shields versus Marshall, but the second fight, the rematch, could be billed as a main event unto itself. Michaela's problem is
she's at Alicia's mercy. Alicia isn't on her time. She's on Alicia's.
I think if Michaela came to her senses and was like, you know what, Alicia Baumgardner did beat me fair and square, and I would love a rematch, maybe it would be a different answer. But because she's in denial and because she's still bitter, it makes me feel like, well, you still don't get it. You know, when you take a loss, you take that loss and you move forward and you grow from it. And I've had that experience, so I know what that looks like. And I'm not gonna sit up and be like, you know, I won that fight, I need a rematch. It doesn't work like that. So I would say take some humble pie, regain yourself, do what you got to do, and maybe we'll meet in the end.
Alicia Baumgardner isn't outright shooting down the possibility that the two might meet again, but she's got prior engagements. The same kind of engagements that Michaela Mayer would have been engaged in had she won the fight.
But she didn't, so she's got to wait. Nobody likes a taste of their own medicine, and what this is a case of sour grapes.
So Alicia's making her sweat a little bit. So what? You think Michaela Mayer would have did something different?
She wouldn't. She'd be doing the exact same thing.
Because I don't anticipate that Alicia Baumgardner will remain in the super featherweight division much longer beyond the LM Mekhaled fight, it's conceivable that she may join Michaela Mayer up there at lightweight at 135 pounds. The rematch, the second fight, is a definite possibility.
What does Michaela Mayer need to do differently?
In a second fight, in a rematch, she needs to create separation. In the early goings of that match, Michaela Mayer's money punch is the jab.
She's got a very good jab, a very effective jab, but opposite the ring Alicia Baumgardner, her jab was offset by the counter right hand of Alicia Baumgardner.
It made it difficult for Michaela to get within striking distance of Alicia, jabbing her way in, because her jab was being countered by a strong right hand over the top from Alicia, so she's got to work that out.
Easier said than done, I know, but that's what she's got to do. She lost a good number of the early rounds in the fight on the premise that there was a strong right hand there to meet her whenever she let that left hand go.
A counter right hand, which led to her starting the fight off at a severe deficit. I think I had Alicia winning the first 2 to 3 rounds.
Somehow she's got to create separation. I don't know how she's going to do it. That's up to her and Al Mitchell to figure out.
They've got time to think on it because that rematch ain't next and it may not come after next. They have enough time to pontificate, come up with a strategy.
Instead of pontificating what could have been if the fight were 3-minute rounds instead of 2-minute rounds, and if it were a 12-round fight instead of a 10-round fight.
Enough of that already. In men's super middleweight and light heavyweight news, Canelo Alvarez's trainer wants Dimitri Bivol rematch this year.
And I've said it before. I'll say it here again. I'm not keen on the rematch. I'm not keen on the second fight. I'd rather see Dimitri Bivol take on the winner of Beterbiev versus Yard, though unfortunately, not sure we're going to get that.
So the second fight, the rematch with Canelo, becomes a distinct possibility. The discussions really are, does that take place at 175 or 168? Canelo really doesn't want to lose his belts at 168, and a lot will depend on the rulings of the governing bodies. I think Canelo Alvarez would almost prefer that fight with Bivol at 175, but I know that Dimitri Bivol is about belts, is about legacy. He's made it clear to us that he can make 168 pounds. It's not unfair for Canelo to go to 175. He's done it before. I don't think he would want to call it unfair. He lost, and that's the situation. But I feel that Canelo against Bivol at 168 would enable Dimitri Bivol to try and become undisputed at 168.
They're coming at this thing from an angle. That's what they're doing. They figure that if the fight's at 168 as opposed to 175, that improves Canelo Alvarez's chances. Though in truth, if Canelo fights him at 168 as opposed to 175,
people are going to say that he drained him, irrespective of what he agrees to. If he were to be triumphant, he could move on to fight Beterbiev at 175. If he were to lose to Canelo at 168, he could still fight Beterbiev for the undisputed championship at 175. So when you're talking about chasing greatness, when you're talking about legacy, Dimitri Bivol is a fighter that is all about that. He has a chance to rematch Canelo Alvarez for the undisputed championship at 168 and then move to fight Beterbiev for the undisputed championship at 175. This is an incredible plan and an incredible opportunity that could unfold for Dimitri Bivol.
People won't respect it. They won't respect it irrespective of what Dimitri Bivol agrees to.
They'll just say that he drained him the same way that he drained Sergey Kovalev. I mean, look at how they look at that fight. Look at what people say.
Kovalev's a big boy. He can take care of himself. He agreed to the fight under those circumstances, but you still have people rationalizing reasons to criticize Canelo for how the fight played out.
Talks are underway to try and plan out our presentation to Canelo Alvarez and Eddie Reynoso for what 2023 looks like, and it's going to be really exciting. Yeah, people will always be excited about the rematch with Bivol because Canelo puts it on the line again. Another defeat for Canelo Alvarez would be disastrous. I have to be honest with you. The way the first fight planned out, I think the rematch is extremely dangerous for Canelo Alvarez and Eddie Reynoso. This is what they're about. I have to be honest with you. I was shocked when I received a phone call from Eddie Reynoso saying, "We want Bivol. We want Bivol. Canelo wants revenge against Dimitri Bivol."
168 or 175, Dimitri Bivol's base style is kryptonite for Canelo Alvarez.
That just shows you that ever since that defeat, it's been eating him up. Whatever way you want to look at it, he's a winner, and he wants another fight. Just like AJ against Alexander Usyk, they believe they can win, but it's a very dangerous task. Coming out of the May fight against John Ryder, getting that momentum going into the Bivol fight, we also need to provide Dimitri Bivol, in the meantime, with a voluntary defense of his 175-pound title, because he's not going to sit around and wait for Canelo Alvarez
Defending against some mandatory.
which in this situation would be John Ryder by way of the WBO. So there are a lot of boxes to be ticked for our fighters in this process, but I love the idea of the rematch between those fighters in September for the undisputed at 168, and it clears the way for Dimitri Bivol, win or lose, to fight the winner of Beterbiev versus Yard.
Been talking about this a lot the last couple of weeks, that Dimitri Bivol's going to have to keep busy with somebody. The name of Joshua Buatsi has emerged as a front-runner for a Bivol fight, though there's no official announcement.
If you're talking about legacy, that would put Dimitri Bivol as one of the greatest fighters of all time if he can defeat Canelo Alvarez again and then defeat Artur Beterbiev. There are so many things that need to happen. Canelo has got to come back. We've got to negotiate the deal. Beterbiev has got to fight Yard.
And he's got to win, because if Anthony pulls the upset, if Anthony upsets the apple cart for Artur Beterbiev, you can kiss that undisputed light heavyweight title fight goodbye.
Frank's not going to place any emphasis on putting Anthony Yard in there with Dimitri Bivol due to the risks. What the conversation will then turn into is how much greater Artur was than Dimitri, and how because Anthony beat Artur, he doesn't need Dimitri. He's already got his lapdog, Dasani, whatever his name is. He's already running spin for the company, already running spin to down-talk Dimitri Bivol.
Towing the company line, and he's not being the least bit subtle about it. He never is.
But in a nutshell, if Anthony Yard ends up beating Artur Beterbiev and he gets his hands on 3 of the 4 major titles at this weight, Frank's not letting Dimitri Bivol anywhere near him.
How does that work, though? If he can pull off the upset against Artur, why can't you give him good odds against Dimitri?
It's because styles make fights. Artur Beterbiev, crafty boxer and destructive puncher that he might be, he's also an aging fighter who's sparsely active. Anthony Yard, he's a pretty decent-sized puncher and a pretty decent counter-puncher. In the event that he can hit Artur with a punch he doesn't see and take him out.
I mean, remember, Artur's been knocked down 2 times already, once by Jeff Page, then again by Callum Johnson. He can be caught.
He has been caught, and it's not completely outside the realm of possibility that Anthony could nail him with something hard.
It could happen, but if it does, that don't speak to what a Bivol fight would look like, because Dimitri Bivol, compared to Artur, is a lot more defensively responsible, not as old, not as injury prone,
and harder to hit with a counter shot.
Tack on that Dimitri Bivol still appears to be a matchroom fighter, all that cross-promo, cross-platform stuff, it just muddies up the waters.
In a situation where Anthony Yard pulls off a monumental upset, I hardly think that Frank would be in any hurry to put that fighter back in harm's way when it gives him possession of 3 of the 4 alphabet titles at this weight.
I'm telling you, if Anthony wins, they're just going to start up with the who needs Dimitri Bivol crap.
Whereas if Artur wins, Artur, who's a lot older than Anthony, you know, he ain't got as much time to waste. He ain't got as much time to play. If he beats Anthony, the logical thing to do is to move him right into that Bivol fight.
At that point, that would be the biggest fight you could make for him.
In truth, I'd rather see Dimitri Bivol take on the winner of this fight later on this year than see him share the ring with Canelo for a second time, though it is contingent upon who wins and what will Dimitri's promotional situation be later on this year. Dimitri Bivol himself, who says he doesn't care about Canelo's plans. He vows to be patient for undisputed shot.
We've heard Dimitri Bivol say this before.
He don't prioritize that Canelo Alvarez rematch more than he prioritizes becoming his division's undisputed champion. He doesn't really want to be at Canelo Alvarez's mercy.
Cut from a different cloth, this guy is.
I don't care about Canelo's plans, to be honest, Bivol told IFL TV. I don't want to depend on his decision against who he wants to fight. I just want to fight. I want to fight for the belt. If I don't get this this unification fight for all the belts. Give me another fight, and I will be patient. One day, I will get to fight for the belts. I want to fight for the belts, Bivol added. Whoever has the belts, I want to fight him. Just one. Enough. Only for belts.
The logic there is simple. If you rely on Canelo Alvarez for your biggest prices and your biggest paydays instead of carving out a legacy of your own on your own terms, what happens is you end up at his mercy.
Like all these other guys that have become so comfortable over time name-dropping Canelo Alvarez whilst playing it safe and waiting for him to give them a call.
Fighting in fights that nobody cares about whilst adding nothing to their legacies and nothing to their own marquee value. Dimitri Bivol is not like those guys.
He beat Canelo Alvarez already. He doesn't want to sit around waiting for him. He very recently addressed the upcoming Beterbiev versus Yard fight that we just talked about, and he stated, Yard looks strong, Bivol said. But of course, Beterbiev has much more experience than Yard, amateur experience, and he's good in pro. He's strong too. It's an interesting fight, but Beterbiev is more experienced, has more skills, I think, and for Dimitri's sake, he better hope that Artur wins that fight.
Anthony's younger than Artur Beterbiev, you understand. He's a younger man, and there's not the same sense of urgency for him that there is for Artur. Artur needs a big fight. He's not getting any younger.
It's more likely that we get a Beterbiev versus Bivol fight than a Beterbiev versus Yard fight, because I'm of the opinion that what Frank would move to do if Anthony lifted those 3 belts from Artur is he'd sooner put him in there with guys like Callum Smith or Joshua Buatsi. Try to make those fights that are comparatively more winnable fights
and more marketable in the United Kingdom. He'd use those 3 belts as leverage to funnel all the talent, the domestic talent in the UK to him.
Don't forget that Callum Smith is the WBC's mandatory challenger. There's already a precedence for him to face the winner of that fight. Unless we forget, there's also Joshua Buatsi. Frank Warren would love to bring that guy over from Matchroom to do the fight on his side of things on the premise that Anthony is the champion. Anthony is the A side.
If he wins.
He's not going to put any priority on the undisputed light heavyweight championship. He's not going to put any emphasis on a Bivol versus Yard fight. Moreover, Bivol presents a much greater challenge than either a Joshua Buatsi or a Callum Smith would.
Now, most people aren't actually picking Anthony Yard to beat Artur Beterbiev, but boxing does have a way of surprising you, and it's not something you can rule out.
This is more or less why you also have to entertain the possibility that Dimitri might fight Canelo Alvarez for a second time. If he cannot gain access to the winner of that fight, what's he gonna do?
You guys know how I feel about it. I'd prefer to see Dimitri Bivol fight the winner of that fight, irrespective of who it is. I'm not keen on a Canelo Alvarez rematch at either 168 or 175, and apparently Dimitri isn't either. He's focused on those belts.
His promotional situation is a talking point of some significance because I believe Bivol versus Beterbiev can happen under the right conditions. If Dimitri Bivol is free to go over to the Top Rank and ESPN side of things, then maybe the fight can happen. But Beterbiev's got to beat Yard.
Bivol's got to beat whoever he's fighting next, and beyond that, he has to have the autonomy to be able to go over there. He's got to be a network and promotional free agent.
And Bob's got to be willing to pay to play. He says that he is. He says that he won't let politics get in the way of that fight, but
we'll see.